Hello all, welcome to the Potted Plant Politics YouTube channel. This is a YouTube channel I am starting because I love ranting about politics and particularly strong views that certain people on the left and right of politics might have. And essentially I thought to myself, what I'd like to do is give my thoughts on these opinions, both from an economic perspective, a political perspective, and also a general social perspective too. As I was creating this YouTube channel, I thought to myself, what better way to start an entirely new YouTube channel than discuss the most controversial and hotly debated topic in UK politics right now: immigration. More specifically, the weaponization of immigration as used by right-wing political parties such as Reform. In order to do that, we must first look at a man who is beloved by millions of people, has been voted the world's sexiest man for 10 years running by Vogue magazine. No, I'm only taking the piss. It's actually Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is the leader of the Reform UK party, and he is also the MP for Clacton. This man has run several British right-wing parties, including UKIP, the Brexit party, and most recently Reform UK. Obviously taking over from everybody's favourite cack, Richard Tice. Oh yes, please, Farage, take over my party, will you? Make us famous. Please, Farage. But before Reform, let's talk about the infamous Breaking Point poster with Nigel Farage standing in front of it. This was a very famous poster with images of thousands of immigrants flocking into the UK with no border control. Essentially saying to anyone who looks at the poster, you need to panic because these immigrants are going to come in to our sovereign country and take over everything. They're gonna put pressure on our public sector. Which, interestingly, an ISOP poll reveals that 7 out of 10 Britons believe immigrants put pressure on public sector services. So essentially the poster has done his job as so far as to scare people into believing mass immigration is coming. This leads me on to my broader implications, which is that right-wing politics, and in some cases even left-wing politics, is run on fear. Either fear of the coming immigration and they're gonna take our jobs, Sharia law introductions, things like that. Or you have from the left's perspective, the fear of right wing taking power and removing things like the welfare system and disability benefits. Which leads me on to my whole point of this first video. Politics is conceptually based on fear and echo chambers of certain viewpoints being spread by misinformation. For example, many of the right-wing leaning voters in the UK, for example, Doris down the street, seem to think that immigrants and immigration hotels, by extension, are an example of luxury. They are literally military-style bunk beds and cramped spaces with shared accommodation. They might have at one point been 5-star hotels or pretty nice hotels, but the argument that they still 5-star hotels and these immigrants live a life of luxury is just completely baseless and simply used as another example of fear-based politics, trying to get everybody to panic, and then reforms seem like the sensible ones, going, calm down everybody, vote for us, we're gonna sort the country out, we'll kick the immigrants out. When in actuality, at least when it comes to the public service point that I made earlier, there is actually a dependence on legal immigration to run one of the largest parts of the public sector. Take, for example, the NHS. Approximately 21% of all NHS staff are foreign-born people, whether that be from countries such as India, Nigeria, Australia, Germany, etc., etc. And still, the NHS is struggling. People have longer waiting lines than ever before, and yet still there is people out there who genuinely believe that immigrants and immigration as a whole puts more pressure on the public sector than it helps it. And then when you take a look at things like the care sector. Now, before I get into this, I feel like just a bit of background and contextual information is needed. I, myself, am a wheelchair user. And I rely on community carers. And I find that many of my community carers, let's say around one in 5, so around the same number as the NHS workers, are actually originally from Nigeria, India, for example. And even my PA in university was Polish. And without these people, I wouldn't be able to have the care in place that I do, because these jobs, they're low paying, they're long hours, and nobody wants to do them. Productivity has continually fallen in this country since the 70s. So, I guess what I'm basically trying to say is, we need immigration to do the basic jobs like your care, your NHS workers, because nobody else wants to do them, because you have to deal with sick people. You have to wipe the literal bums of some of these people and some of these clients, and even with the level of immigration we've got now, there's still 130,000 vacancies within the care sector. So, to those people who say we should stop immigration, we should stop all these people from coming in. If they didn't come in, controversial opinion, yes, but I personally believe almost the entire public sector would completely collapse in on itself as a result of low productivity and nobody wanting to do these kind of jobs where you've got to look after someone, they might be ill, they can't wipe their own bum, they can't rest themselves, so you have to do it. And nobody would want to do that because they're not getting paid enough and there's a financial crisis. And many of these immigrants who come over to this country actually want to work. It's the systems, the slow paper gathering systems that don't allow them to work for 6 months to 12 months, and then they gotta stay in these hotels on their weekly allowances. That's not a choice for most of those people. Most of those people are hard working and they want to work. So, what I'm basically trying to say is, you can't blame the people themselves for a broken system. If we sped up the system and had a more efficient system, more people would be able to work a lot faster than they are already. And not to mention some of the remarks that Reform have platformed towards immigrants and people of ethnic minorities. Sarah Pochin has been quoted saying, "It drives me mad when I see adverts full of black people, full of Asian people, and what makes it even more troubling, and this comes down to a systemic problem with Parliament. In Parliament, you're not allowed to call somebody a liar. So, Sarah Pochin got called a liar in Parliament, or a racist, and the person who made that comment was either forced to retract that statement or be forced to leave the chambers. Now, the systemic problem with that is, if you can't call someone a racist when they commit a racist act in Parliament, the place where everybody is meant to be held accountable for their actions, what otherwise are you meant to do? What does Nigel Farage do in response to this? Calls the comments ugly and wrong. But here's the interesting thing. Is Sarah Pochin still in the party? Absolutely she is. And I tell you what drives me mad. The fact that people like Sarah Connolly can say things like that and still keep their jobs. It shouldn't be allowed. And another example, Lucy Connolly. Lucy Connolly said, "Set fire to all the fucking hotels." She was later jailed for racial inciting. And she said, "If that makes me a racist, so be it." What did Reform do with this delightful woman? Oh, they only brought her up on stage at a conference, and Nigel Farage even hugged the woman in front of everybody. And the problem is with this, right? Not to mention the moral implications, but also there's a concept in economics called herd behaviour. Now, what herd behaviour is when one person says something, and then another person says something, and then a bunch of people end up doing that one thing because they've all said it. That can then lead to, okay, that's okay, that's the right thing to do, which can then lead to marches and inciting violence. Do you see the issue here? The issue is, by platforming someone so vehemently racist and morally wrong, you then ensure other people that, oh, if you have those opinions, it's okay. Which, by the way, it's not okay. And as a political party, I think you have a responsibility to tell your voters, okay, we might be right-wing, but we don't agree with racism. But by embracing a racist, you're sending across the complete wrong message. And that is dangerous in a society where things like herd behaviour exist and impulsive actions. And right-wing parties could get their points across much better. Like, an example of a valid point, an horrific act, also is the grooming gang incidents. Now, these acts were unspeakably horrific. And we definitely should keep women safe and protect women's rights. So it's a really valid and serious and complicated point. It's a vile act committed by a vile group of individuals. Understandably, people are outraged, as they should be. But what does everybody do? Instantly starts blaming a whole culture. They immediately start to go, immigrants, bad. Immigrants have done this. And whilst immigrants did do that one act, that was a very specific group of people. And that's what we need to view people as. People. Like, for example, when a white man murders another white man, or an Asian, or a black man, does everybody go, oh, all white men bad? No, they go, that man is a disgusting man. And that's what everybody needs to do. They need to stop blaming the individual ethnic minorities, and they need to blame the people who have specifically committed those vile acts. But what does everybody do instead? Everybody uses our herd behaviour and goes, immigrants bad. Which takes away from the points that we do need to address, which is women's safety and prevention of sexual assaults against women. But instead, everybody seems to be blaming these ethnic cultures rather than focusing on the main concerns. So there is a example of what right-wing politicians could be saying about cultural integration and things like that. But instead, they're all too busy going, let's platform these racists. Let's focus on all immigration bad. When if they actually stopped for a minute, they would realise they actually had a valid point. So, how do we solve the issue of integration of immigrants into British societal norms and culture? Well, we could adopt the Norwegian strategy of compulsory classes on gender equality, language classes. So, essentially what I'm trying to say is there's a middle ground in which immigration works for everybody if we apply the proper processes to ensure that, one, we can get everybody into work a lot faster if we improve our systems, and two, we can keep women and girls safer on the streets if we just teach. And ultimately, we need to stop blaming certain ethnic cultures for acts of individuals and broader economic implications, like the collapsing of the public sector. Thank you very much for watching.